You're listening to the Zine Collector Podcast, Episode 5, Zine Pricing, Risographs, and Zine Culture, an interview with Sober Bob Monthly. Hello Zine friends, welcome to the Zine Collector. I'm your host Jaime Nyx, and if you hadn't already noticed, given the length of this podcast, we're doing things a little bit differently this round. I have interviewed someone, and I think you'll be interested to hear her thoughts on things. I am very, very happy to welcome artist, zine maker, and all-around talented soul, Sober Bob Monthly, to the show today. If you saw last week's Happy Mail Monday video, you know I rambled on a bit about Sober Bob and how I admire her for her bravery in speaking her mind and talking about issues that other people are afraid to talk about. So today, Sober Bob is here to chat about zine pricing, risographing, zine culture, influences, zine fairs. We covered a lot of things for originally only having 10 questions. So without further ado, well, hello Sober Bob. Welcome to the Zine Collector. Thank you for joining me. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us how you got into zine making? I haven't had the pleasure of the Sober Bob origin story.
Well, about 2 years ago, maybe 1.5 to 2, I was fired from a job unfairly and I tried to find help, and I decided, oh wow, this zinc place is quite nice, I might go there and, use their free resources, and that's how I got started.
Oh, that's brilliant. I really love that, and I think maybe we should do a little copy and destroy special in the future. So I'd like to just jump right in because you are the strong voice that I aspire to be. And I'm really eager to hear your thoughts on the topics today, starting with the murky waters of zine pricing. Or are these waters murky to you? Is it a clear issue for you, zine pricing?
In a way, I feel like I have a few more perspectives than other people, so I can see it a bit clearer, but I have the context where I come from. I utilize a space that has free printing, and I can still justify those being sold for money, but I also understand that there's, you shouldn't be doing this as a profit-making venture. You're not out there to try and get market share.
For me, zine pricing went from a complex issue that I was very scared of and didn't want to talk about to a complex issue that I felt I should, get my confidence up and talk about it, is when I started getting a bit annoyed at what I was seeing online. I'm not going to name and shame. I'm basically just going to publicly say that I do not support this practice whatsoever, and just say that I saw a listing for a black and white A6 size, quarter size for international, zine for $5. Not exactly the most outrageous thing, maybe a little bit higher end for my preferences, but in the same listing, you could upgrade to an A5 and that would cost you $10. So double the price for the exact same thing. And I mean exact same. There were no bonuses in the bigger size. And yeah, so it was A6 for $5, A5 for $10, and for US listeners, it was like a quarter size for $5 and the exact same thing for $10 if you bought it in half fold size. And I saw that and I was like, nope, that's my line. I can't just sit back and admire the hustle. I can't just sit back and go, ooh, maybe I could get that kind of profit, because it just seemed wrong to me.
Yeah, that's pretty intense, especially when you consider that, a small zine like that, I don't know how much effort went into it. I don't know if this person maybe was just like, they think themselves a professional artist and yeah, their work might be, worth a bit more, but if the presentation isn't worth it, what are they trying to sell? Are they trying to sell their ideas? If they're not, then, well, if they are, why are they presenting them in such a poor format. I've seen zines with like so much more effort for cheaper.
Oh yeah, I have seen absolutely gorgeous scenes that were again so much cheaper, like you said. And this was this definitely was had art elements to it, but I just thought. But the thing was, it wasn't special paper, it wasn't a special cover, it wasn't contributors that need to be paid. It was just a zine, and it was double the price if you wanted a bigger one. And it blew my mind. But I am getting a little bit off track. Was there a moment? That was my moment. So was there a moment for you when zine pricing became something that needed to be discussed? Has it always been an issue or a growing one, in your opinion?
Yeah, my main thing that when it came up was probably I people who know me know I kind of shit on risographing quite a bit, but because of the format, it's very bad for putting in the library. But my main thing was noticing that people were getting these risographed zines, and risographing itself is technically cheaper than inkjet on some occasions if you do it right. But these people, they were using the idea of something being risographed as the selling point. Like, you pay extra because this thing is risographed. They had like a version that was regular print and one that was risographed, and it was more expensive, and they were trying to up the price based on like, using this obscure printing technique. So, and I saw that and I'm just like, that's ridiculous. Why would I pay more? Why are you charging people, that there's no artistic integrity in that? And really, it did start bothering me at that point.
Yeah, definitely. We will touch on the risographing a little bit later, but that when I was doing research for this and I was looking at zines on Reddit and there was this comment saying, oh yes, I do expect to pay more for risographing, but when you look up the definition of risographing, it's meant to be the cheapest, sort of cheap and fast option.
Yeah, and it's so... I actually think that there's a lot of artistic thought that goes in it, because you do have to think about colours overlapping and there is limited colour scheme. But if people aren't using it for that purpose, then why would I bother paying any extra? That's dumb.
Exactly. And and obviously, an inkjet versus a risograph, there are differences, obviously, but for me, it's sort of the same issue. It's the A6 versus the A5. If you're getting the exact same thing, mostly, obviously there's the difference in that one, but why would you pay so much more? Because usually it's a significant gap, usually, isn't it?
Yeah, oh my goodness. Sometimes it can be, I'm trying to think of a specific example, because I have seen it. Like, you can see the difference between like the risographed and the, I think it was about a $10 difference.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was steep, and I was just not impressed by that at all.
No, you wouldn't be.
It made me not want to buy. Like, it kind of felt like I could imagine their thought process was like, oh, I have a cheaper version for people who can't afford it. But in my mind, I'm just like, why bother not having the cheap? Like, why bother going and having the expensive version at all if it's exactly the same and doesn't add anything to it?
Exactly. Like, at least stick a piece of vellum in there and make it feel a bit special, right?
Yeah, like add, maybe had like a little pull-out poster. There's actually some really good zines I've bought that have been collaborative with really cool, pull-out posters and, smart thinking about how it's done. And yeah, and then I see these really low effort kind of things with the expectation that they would get the same success.
Yeah, it's in a world that, in the zine verse, in a world that lacks such strong definitions, it's strange that risographing has, if it's risographed, it's more expensive. It has to be that sort of thing.
And I've noticed that a lot of people have increased risograph zines. I don't really care that much, although I do not like having to put them in the library. I have to put a plastic sleeve around them to stop them from rubbing off on other zines. But my main thing is that I really like seeing risographed art books, ones that have a lot of effort and smart things put in, so they can charge the if it's an art book, if you call it an art book, I'm willing to pay that $30 to $50 if it's like really intense with a lot of, thought put into it. Don't call it a zine.
That's exactly it. That is... I'm getting ahead of my own conversation because I know that's part of a future question.
Yeah, that's like... Don't want to jump too far ahead.
Oh yeah, there's just so much to talk about. I'm so excited to be talking to you about this. So I will reel it back a little bit and back to regular zine, good old black and white copy sort of zine.
Yep.
My observations lie more in online shops sort of things. I don't attend a lot of in-person events for various reasons, but you have more experience in the in-person event with the Hanging Affair last December, which I hear was very successful, and with the annual Zine and Indie Comics Symposium, of which you have been recently made coordinator. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
So exciting. I know a coordinator, like I feel a bit special,
Very special.
So online, I have noticed what I feel is a slow creep of more expensive zines that I feel aren't necessarily something that should be more expensive compared to other things. Have you found that in in-person scenes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I find it from people who previously made very accessible zines have suddenly thought to themselves, this is a market I can exploit almost.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, and it feels really, really disingenuous. So, and I'm seeing a lot of really high effort zines like Wolfpack. Mm. They're really high effort. They're $10, but they pay their contributors in. But my thing is that they are getting pushed aside with their high quality content at a pretty reasonable price in lieu of people who might be more popular or the like trying to push these very expensive things. And it's really been quite bothersome.
So do you think that people have been saying, I have this big of a name so I can charge more?
Yeah, in a way, and I think there's also the aspect they think they've seen a lot of these. There's an idea that if it's handmade, it's worth more, and I do definitely think that about certain things. Like handmade jewelry, I'll pay more for a pretty ring that I get to design and someone makes for me. That's fine, but that doesn't translate well to a zine thing, considering that it's handmade, yes, but you're hand making it out of necessity, not out of not having an alternative.
Yeah, there's the obvious handmade thing, but when you're talking about I say stock standard, I mean no insult to zines, but your traditional zine, like you're hand making it, but unless you're handing out master copies, like one-off master copy, make sure the double tape is sturdy because this is your zine now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's the mass production side of things. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's handmade, but not as handmade as a piece of jewelry, I think.
Yeah. And it's not to say that there's no effort put into it. It's just that an example, my Too Pretentious for Melbourne zine, the first one, it was literally just one A3 piece of paper folded up. And yeah, I did have to, hand fold each and every single one of them. But I only charge $1 for it because I've probably made, 200 of them.
Yeah.
It's just how it is, you're putting it in, I could have made it in such a way that I could have been like, I'll publish it this way and it'll be easier. I was doing it because I was trying to get the message out there. I didn't care about the money or the time or whatever.
Exactly. And it's not that I think you are saying that the time isn't of value. There's just so much in the culture of making things affordable and thus accessible.
Yeah. I guess accessibility is what we aim for in most zine things.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a barrage of questions coming up, but they're all related, so bear with me.
All right, I won't go off too many tangents.
Oh, you're welcome to tangents. I'm just warning you that there's like 4 or 5 questions before tangent mode.
Okay.
When it comes to zine pricing, what things influence how you feel about a zine's price? Like we've touched a bit on Wolfpack. How much are you willing to accept? Like, do you feel better about or different about an expensive zine if you know they pay their contributors, or does paying contributors turn something from a zine into something else? Does it go from a zine to an art book if it pays contributors and is printed with a professional printer, that sort of thing?
I'll ignore the last bit because I do have a separate issue on that. But I think when it comes to zine pricing and what things influence, I go for a mix of the content, like high quality content, the print method, and whether it's color and the like, and whether they do pay their contributors or not. I think that paying contributors is a 10 out of 10 way to make a zine that maybe you only have a couple of ideas and you want, like, if you're, say, a disabled person and you want to get multiple people's experiences and you're willing to pay people for that time, that more power to you. I will pay for that zine. I will pay, $15 for that zine. Or I think the most expensive I've ever spent on a zine was $20, but it was two printed things with a poster and an extra zine in part of it, and I got to meet the creator and he paid his contributors.
Oh, that's cool. So it was a zine pack and an experience.
Yeah, and that one was risographed, so it was one of the better uses I've ever seen of risographing. Oh. But you could tell that wasn't the selling point. The selling point was not that it was risographed. They used it to accentuate the design that they'd already kind of, considered having.
Used it to a function rather than a... I'm missing the word, but basically, rather than the risograph being the sale, the thing is the sale, but the risograph is the function. If I'm making any sense.
Yeah, I get you. Like, I don't care whether, a painting is made with oil or acrylic or whatever. I just like that it looks nice.
That is a great way to put it.
If the medium is correct for it, then yeah, go for it. But I'm not going to be that, I don't care that much.
So, taking that metaphor, you're not going to buy it because it's oils. You're going to buy it because it's nice. You like it.
Yeah. I can always appreciate that, say, it might be slightly harder or whatever, but it's a smaller factor to me than what it might be, than what people assume it should be. Like we were saying before, people are selling zines on the idea that they're risographed. I'm like, you could have gotten the same, almost exactly the same outcome and look and style with any other printing method.
Excuse me. Yes, that's definitely true. I was just thinking the most expensive zine that I've ever bought was a risograph zine. I mean, admittedly, it was $12. So, it wasn't the most expensive risograph zine I've seen, but it was definitely, it was on really nice paper and everything, but still.
Actually, that's another good thing that we haven't really touched on with, I guess, some of the risographing, is that it sometimes is just on plain paper. I don't know why you've put all this effort into getting a really nice, print method done, and you've just put it on, Remax paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Just printer paper.
The lowest GSM you can pick up at, your local paper shop.
Yeah, just went down to Officeworks, eh?
Oh, yeah. We probably shouldn't get into accents because I'm absolutely awful.
Oh, no.
I will end up sounding so palm and you'll be so annoyed.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I think when we discuss what is a zine and what is an art book, I'm willing to let a creator choose that. At some level, especially if they're, doing it in good faith, to understand the difference between a zine and an art book. It's like, I've seen art books that look like zines, and they say, this is an art book. And I'm just like, oh, okay, that's an interesting way, but thanks for letting me know. And then I've seen people trying to sell zines that are professionally bound. and from a big copy house.
Yeah, that's always...
So
I think as far as binding goes, like, oh gosh, it's another tricky thing, because I was thinking, Staples do it. Staples, okay, call it a zine. Staple it, you're pretty safe calling it a zine, but at the same time, like, I know a zine maker who has started doing like the gluing, the perfect binding, and I'd still call it a zine. It's very cute. So, Sober Bob. I think the topic of zine pricing can be especially confusing for new zine makers. When you search online, you can see an absolutely gorgeous 24-page A5 art zine for $5, and next to that is a 1-page folded black and white mini zine for the same price. And this is, again, not on special paper or anything like that. Do you think this kind of price variation is harmful to zines overall?
Absolutely. You've got a lot of people who are coming into the scene not knowing what to expect. They might have Googled what a zine is, and that's most people's entry point, and that's great. And then they try and experience that culture, and respectfully, trying to buy things and being really positive about it. And then they're faced with this dilemma of, why am I being expected to pay so much for something that isn't, that they might not perceive as being worth it compared to other things that they've seen? And then someone who wants to make zines, they're just like, oh, it might not be worth my time if I don't price it this way. Everyone else is pricing it that way, and they seem like they're doing pretty well. I better, jump on that train. I need a bit of extra beer money, or especially in case of Festival of the Photocopier, some of those people are coming from interstate. They feel really terrible if they don't make any, sales. So they've got to try and, put the price up, and then it just gets really murky because a lot of the local people who didn't have to spend any money except for, say, a train ticket to get there, from the outer suburbs, they can charge the, lower rates, and then it just, so many tangled webs.
Exactly. Like, when I went to Festival of the Photocopier, I only went from Bendigo, so it was a train ticket. And even then I just felt this pressure, like I'm supposed to make something back, which definitely harkens to a bigger subject about consumerism, and it's much bigger than we'll cover today. But yeah, it's definitely, it's really hard, and there's no one exactly standing around. I mean, there are workshops and everything, but there's no one standing around saying, listen, your A7 1-page folded zine should be $2 to $4 depending on your printing, that sort of thing. There's the lack of gatekeepers is an awesome thing, but at the same time that leaves a lot of people floundering in what to do.
I guess we should think of it less like we need gatekeepers and more like we need guides. Like people who are willing to, there's no assumptions, there's no gatekeeping. I don't care. I've bought zines for like $3 that were just scribbles because they looked amazing and I love them. There should be no gatekeeping on content, but there should be people guiding, or, no call-out culture. I really hate call-out culture, but people saying openly, hey, maybe you're not going to be able to sell many at this price. You should maybe reconsider. Your work still has value. It's just that it's not able to be, distributed as well at what you're doing right now.
And
I think that would be a better way of doing it.
That's exactly it. It's so tricky, and it can be so sensitive, because you don't want anyone to feel like their time isn't worth it, or isn't
Absolutely.
worthy, or anything like that. One of my favorite zines, and it's a little bit embarrassing, it was called Fart. And this person had taken like high fashion magazine clippings and just stuck them in there, put little fart clouds behind these high.
Oh, that's amazing! I love that.
I have no idea who made it, and it makes me so sad that I can't say this is amazing and I love it. And I've lost my train of thought. But I feel like that. What you said is a great way to put it. There shouldn't be gatekeepers, there should be guides, and it shouldn't be this faux pas thing to say, listen, traditionally in zine making, that probably wouldn't be $7, that might be $4.
Yeah, or another additional thing, don't be afraid swap zines. I know a lot of people who are just like, oh, I've paid all this money for printing, I don't want to just swap it for another one. And I'm like, this kind of takes a lot out of it, you know. I had trouble even just swapping them at my last Festival of the Photocopier because I'm like, hey, I've got, you know, some coloured zines, you know, with full colour and everything. Do you want to, like, have swapsies? And very few people were like, oh, yeah, let's, you know, get that through. Cool. Shout out to Concrete Queers, who have really nice, really well done zines, and they pay their contributors, and yeah, they just gave me a couple in exchange for my little, you know, folded in half one.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, they were really lovely.
Trading is such a huge part of the culture, and it makes me so sad to think that it's, I don't know if I want to say under threat, but it's such a thing for me that it feels like it's under threat. I can understand some of the higher end type of, I'm thinking of someone when I'm talking about this, and I'm thinking of Bodhi, who does Slow Quest, and I'm sorry, Bodhi, I'm not calling you out, Bodhi. I love your zines. You know I love your zines. But basically, I'm thinking of him because he does this beautiful cream paper, this absolutely intricate artwork, lovely covers, and he does rounding of the corners, and he hand does the perfect binding.
That's wonderful.
Oh, it's so gorgeous.
See, if I wanted to trade for that, I would definitely try and make sure, like, there would be an equal swap. I'd be like, you can have one of all my things, and you can have this, and you can have that, but please, I just don't have any money kind of thing.
Exactly.
Like, I would make sure. But it's perfectly, like, that's the kind of high quality I think of when you're allowed to, you know, start charging a bit more.
Exactly. So there's definitely, people should never feel pressured that they have to trade a specific thing. Like it should be a like worth going back and forth. But like, I hate to think that trading is in any way dying, especially in-person things. Like trading online, there's the postage costs and stuff like that. So I understand that there's a little bit of hesitation there. But when you're in person, like as long as there is an agreement of like value, then please trade. It's awesome. It's a whole part of the thing.
And I spend a lot of oh, hang on one moment. What's up, babe? I'm still in the thing. Yeah. Love you. Yeah, you can leave that in the podcast.
Awesome.
my undying love for my husband.
Aww, hearts, all the feels.
Yeah. I love trading because, especially when I went to Festival of the Photocopier, any money I did make, I just bought more zines, you know? I might as well, like, skip the middleman, screw cash, just start swapping that stuff. Cash is for outsiders.
Exactly. Like, and I was actually a little bit surprised when I was there in 2016, because I actually put a sign on my table that said, I will trade for things. I will trade for your zines.
I did. They actually recommend, a lot of blogs recommend that you have an open trading sign, and yeah, I did too, and not a whole lot. I think a few people who came along was one person who does I forget their name, but they do a zine about making queer non-binary experiences in games.
Oh wow.
And I thought that was really lovely, and it was great to read that. That's a really, you know, interesting message that I hadn't considered, and I was really happy that they were willing to trade. They clearly had a message they just wanted to get out there. I'm like, yeah, hells yeah. Get behind that.
That's so awesome. Like,
yeah.
I'm the, you know, lifetime fence sitter, so I always feel trapped in this, you know, my cowardly space. I'll just say it. Scared to say anything, but I don't want to say that how I feel about zines. Everybody should feel about zines, but I feel like if we lose that desire to connect, if we lose that urge to trade and be heard and hear others in return, like that's a huge part of what zines are that would be lost.
Absolutely. And it's kind of bothersome as well, because you can't always tell when someone's okay to trade. Like, I know Obscene, he does these amazing, like, really quite high quality, he'll go to a proper print shop, really cool zines about horror movies and, you know, horror stuff, and he will trade. And you might not expect that from, say, other, high quality people. So a lot of people who come in, they get really confused. They're like, oh, this guy gave me a really high quality zine in exchange for my, perceived mediocre one. Why are other people not, as keen on doing that? It's just out of the goodness of its heart, really.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. It's funny how it's two sides to all of it. While there's the people who don't want to trade, but there are people who are willing to trade. But then you go up to them and you look at your zine and you look at their zine, you go, they wouldn't want to trade. That's sad and that shouldn't be a thing. But I know I got into that mindset as well. Like, oh, you wouldn't want to trade for my little cupcake or anything like that.
I totally feel you when it comes to that, because if the people who are making it aren't feeling that comfortable, then what's the point? And that's one thing that I've been really encouraging people to do at Zix up here, is that we make that extra time to go around and swap. Like, people will just come around and swap and do things and be really lovely. Even, the bigger ones, like Philip Dearest, he'll go around and he'll swap and oh my God, that man is like so generous.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that we still have people in communities who are demonstrating that, showing that sort of thing.
Yeah. I do wonder if Festival of the Photocopier just has that kind of Melbourne artsy dickhead kind of vibe, no matter what. Like, even if they did everything to try and make it better, they would still have that kind of feeling. And that's just unfortunate.
Yeah, I feel like that touches on things that are a little bit beyond my knowledge, but at the same time, yeah, when you have this feeling that you need to make a profit and that it's about the money rather than the culture or the tradition or the history or anything like that, it spreads, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I do have to say, when I was at Festival of the Photocopier and at the what was it, the Melbourne Book Expo, something like that. They had a little zine.
Okay. Don't they do art book stuff?
They had
as well. Yeah.
They had a section for all the the books and the art books and they stuck us in the National Gallery. They stuck us in a little space and we made the most of it. But at both of those events, my favorite part was arguing with some guy about why fuck was the most superior swear word. Sorry. Sorry.
Oh my God. I had some guy coming along saying I shouldn't use the word cunt, and I'm just like, I own one. I get to say that word all the time I want.
Like, I have direct access to one, so.
And you don't, sir. Even though you're acting like one.
You may act like one, but I have one, so.
Who's the winner here?
Definitely you. Oh, anyway, about those events, I loved a lot of things about them, but the favorite thing was that at one point on both of them, things got slow, and I kind of just looked up the line, and I looked down the line, and we all just started trading. I'm like, here, pass this down to this person, I'd like their zine, and you trade with me for this, and we just kind of did this line of trading up and down the tables, and it was gorgeous.
Oh my goodness, that reminds me of, like, when you're at school and you're, like, passing notes and stuff. Yes. That's so cute. That's wonderful.
It was so that. It was, here's this. And, like, if there were even, in the Melbourne Gallery one, there was one person who was kind of not quite down the line, but saw that we were all trading, and she came around, at that point, I'm just like, leave some zines, take some zines. Sales were done for the day. But I would have done that at any time because I'm, me. But yeah, I think those are such positive, beautiful memories for me. And I never want that sort of ability and comfort level with strangers to go away in zines.
Yeah, no, that feels really positive, and it's really unfortunate that feels like. And we aren't the only people who have those feelings. In my most recent zine, which I'm totally going to plug, and you had a squiz at in your last episode, was too pretentious for Melbourne too. I found so much evidence of people who were like really trying to enjoy themselves and just couldn't. They didn't have that sense. That feeling.
Yeah, that's so sad to me. Like, for me, it's the history. It's what zines are and have represented, and the zine should be a big hug. If you're into hugs.
Even if they're about, like, you know, not the greatest stuff, like, you know, sad stories or, like, trying to expose things, or, you know, there's a whole zine series called Don Burke is a cunt, you know, and he is, but that still felt like, that was a really aggressive, you know, thing to be talking about, but it still felt like, oh, this is this person's story, I need to listen, and, you know, you want to give that person a hug. You're like, I support you through reading this.
Exactly. Like,
yeah.
I think, and sometimes this isn't true, but for me, a lot of times it's the value of connecting through a trade has been greater than my desire to get an equal trade. Like, my very first in-person trade, he looked at my sign and he looked at me and he said, I don't have those genres of zines, but I've got 2 zines. Will you trade for me? And I went all doughy-eyed, anime, shiny eyes. Like, you want to trade with me? And we totally traded.
Like, sometimes about trades, it's like your work will be more desirable than just cash, because cash you could buy anything with, but this person likes your stuff so much that they're willing to give you something that they spent time and effort on.
Exactly.
It's so much nicer.
Oh, gosh, we could have had a whole podcast on zine trading, I think.
Yeah, let's move on and talk about zine trading today.
Pulling it back. Back to zine pricing and all of that good stuff. I don't think that for the love and sustainability or even making a little profit have to be mutually exclusive things. Setting a zine price point can be a delicate balance between wanting to be read and connect with other people and wanting some extra coffee money or ink money or whatever you want to do. How do you as an artist and zine maker strike that balance? How do things like zine culture, tradition, accessibility, etc. influence your decisions?
I think because I do have that access to a lot of free zine printing, I treat it not as a free thing, but as something I have to work for by contributing to the space. So that's why I might charge money for some of my things. And then I also think to myself, that's a sustainable thing. Like, I'm giving back to a community in that way, while also getting a little something out of it for myself, which often ends up just being, you know, either more zines or more materials. But I think my balance usually comes in the form of, you know, trying to pay for public transport so I can continue to contribute. And my big thing is also accessibility. Like, on the down low, I'll just give zines to people for, you know, free, and not even expect to trade back if I see that, you know, if I know them personally and I know they're down in the dumps, or, you know, if, you know, they're not having the best day or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes zines are, excuse me, more than the sale. Like, I have my little what's this then zine 1-page thing that I hand out to people when they say, what's a zine? I say, take this and read and be happy. Discover the joy.
Well, when you print zines, you print them all at home off your own printer, don't you? So you have higher costs, but you still manage to keep your prices very, very reasonable.
I try to. My balance is very much weighted on the wanting to be read and wanting to connect side of things. That's.
And I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, another thing for zine makers and stuff, like, there's always going to be cheap abilities to have printing.
Yeah, definitely.
Like in Melbourne, go to the Sticky Institute, cheapest printing you can get. You know, if you're in Brisbane, come up here, you know, we will help you print zines for free or extremely cheap.
Exactly. There are definitely options there, you know, reach out. That's basically all I can say. Reach out and there will be people to help you. We are the guides of the Zineverse.
Yes, come into our fold. We welcome you.
I'm on the committee. You know, my uniform is in the mail, or my gold star and my tiara.
We've got matching jackets.
Matching jackets, you know, it's like Scouts. You get your badges for, you know, your first zine trade and things like that.
Yes.
Zine Scouts. Oh, I just went Sailor Moon in my head.
Yay. No, that's perfect.
Zine Scouts. You did not see the gesture I just made to the video.
I'll watch it later. It'll be fine.
Woo. The thing I think that gets to me most about zine pricing, and again, what I'm talking about is your standard mass-producible zine. It's basically, it's mass-producible. That's the key word for me. So if you can produce it easily, 10 cents or less a copy, that sort of thing, and you spend an hour and make 30 copies of your mini zine. And I timed myself folding a mini zine just so I can get some figures, because I'm that worried about being judgmental. Like, I suddenly got out my phone and stopwatch. All right, fold a zine. Wanderer was very confused. So if you can spend an hour and make 30 copies of your mini zine, then is it really necessary to make $4 to $5 on every single zine? Like, what are your thoughts about the mass production influence?
I don't think you should be, you know, over time trying to, you know, reduce the costs of your zines as you sell more, because you can definitely, like, use, like, the Shark Self-Help one has been my most popular one, but I've kept it as $1 for the zine, and I could have dropped the price, you know, but I think to myself, if I keep it at that $1, which is clearly a really accessible price for a lot of people to get into it, I can use that as a semi-source of income for, you know, for art supplies to make my next ones. But I do try and keep, you know, I already thought about that mass production when I made that original judgment on how much the zine should have cost. So I guess I actually hadn't really thought about it that much when I think about it like that. But you can mass produce them, and I think mass producing, it doesn't take away from the content it has, and it doesn't take away from the handmaidenness of it, but people do need to be aware that it is something that, you know, if you're mass producing it, you shouldn't be charging ridiculous amounts of money for it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because I'm me, I'm always going by the descriptions online, and okay, you have special paper or you have special printing or anything like that. But so when I know that I could go to Officeworks and print that for 10 cents and you're selling it for $5, I feel a little cheated. And I don't like that feeling is anywhere in the Zineverse, but it also makes me worried because I know that, you know, I'm at a certain financial position, but I know that there are a lot of people who are worse off. And if I can't afford a zine, or if I'm feeling I can't justify that, then there are going to be a lot of people who definitely just go, no, can't do that. And it's so sad to me that anyone would feel that they can't join zines reading and or making them because of price.
This is why libraries are so important. And the Sticky Institute will let you, you know, sit in there and read stuff if you don't have the ability to buy it.
Oh, yeah, I love Sticky.
Like, I will sing their graces for, you know, ages, even though I've shat on them in a lot of zines.
I think, and this is another, could be a tangent, but we must rein in. But I think a lot of things that are associated with Sticky, there's a lot more responsibility to be that isn't Sticky necessarily. But yeah, I will sing their praises to anyone really as well. Like, before I moved from Bendigo to South Australia, I had to make my last pilgrimage to Melbourne and and go to Sticky and get the zines. I just had to do it before we left. I bought so many zines. I've never spent that much money on in a single zine, but I saved up for weeks because I knew this was going to happen.
I'm thinking of zine pricing a bit more. I'm basically a huge leftist, but I do think that this market will sort itself out. If everyone keeps pricing their things higher and higher, less and less people will buy them. They will realize this. And I see a lot of people who get really upset. They're like, why isn't, people buying my stuff? Rah, rah, rah. They have like a bit of a bitch about it. I'm like, it's not their fault that they're not buying something that they either can't or don't think is worth it. You are dealing with a market. And, just because, you might have, a really interesting story to tell doesn't mean that people are going to buy it for, $5 on a single piece of paper.
That's exactly it. I mean, I still have to laugh at anybody coming in thinking that they can just charge whatever they want to charge and that sort of thing hugely expensively, because the very market that you're pitching to is traditionally a market who has financial hardship amongst other hardships and disabilities and things like that. I think it's a little bit silly not to do your market research.
Like, zines are mostly dedicated to marginalized voices. That's why they exist. If they weren't marginalized, they wouldn't be in a zine. They'd be in a newspaper or, some other larger thing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Now, one thing I did want to backtrack a little bit on is risographing, on subjects of mass production, but also because, we've mentioned it. For those who aren't familiar, can we have a little rundown exactly what it is?
Yeah. So risographing is based on the traditional idea of a newspaper print, where you expose rolls of, drums, I guess, to a screen printing type process, but it's way simpler. And then you have several of those rolls or plates or whatever they're called, and you print it single color by single color. So you put down your yellows first, and then your greens, and then maybe, red and blacks, and layer it to try and generate those really interesting colors. And it's quite often uses soy ink as well. So it is, and if you use recycled paper, it can be a more environmentally friendly option. And I know that's why some people like that. You also can do it in, newspaper style. You can get that original, like, old school comic kind of feel out of it.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I really do appreciate the technology. It's really fun to watch. And some of the great risographing that's coming out of Hong Kong and those art books. Elevator Teeth does an amazing zine and art book series based on risographing. And that's, like, top-notch, the best use of risographing as a medium I've ever seen.
Oh, fantastic. There are going to be so many links in the description to check out. It's going to be great.
Oh my god. I'm just like name dropping and you're just going to have to go through and find all these people. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. Even if I did not have to write a description whatsoever, I would be going through and I'd be writing down every single name that you mention just so I can check it out.
Oh, that's great.
So, I did want to touch on this, and I apologize if you covered it before. I can't really remember exactly, but so if risographing is meant to be faster and cheaper and that sort of thing, where do you think the disconnect is? Is it the printers that are charging more for the what's the word, the experience, that sort of thing, the commodity of risographing? Is it on part of the people who are selling them? Is it both? Like, where are we is it just somebody priced a risograph really highly and then other people followed? Where do you feel all that kind of fell together?
I think some of it came from what I see quite often, especially because I do a lot of old photography, but now film and cameras are way more expensive when they used to not be. Same thing happened to risographing. It went really unpopular for ages on the advent of inkjet and laser printing, which was, get better quality prints really easily, or, high quality glisse printing became the norm. Mm-hmm. So this risograph technology just fell to the wayside. It didn't produce as great results. It basically relegated to newspapers and things that were able to just be thrown out really quickly. So all these risograph printers became really cheap or free. People were just throwing them out. And a lot of people pick them up and they're just like, oh shit, I can print risograph whenever I want. I have all this stuff. So that's how it got a bit popular, and then that's how it became a little bit more expensive when it shouldn't have been, because a lot of Southeast Asian countries they still have the risographing, and they have very, they don't charge extra for that kind of thing.
Because they're still their standard? Sort of?
Not standard, it's just that there's more of them over there. So it's, more competitive market. You also have that thing. Like, if you try and get Rizograph in Australia, you've got, I think it was Glom Press or Ashley Roning, and I think there's like a couple people up in Brisbane who do it as well. Yeah, there's not a whole lot.
Okay. So
it is a bit of a weird scarcity thing.
Which would play into things a bit more, I imagine.
Yeah. So people, they see this, it's the same way that sometimes people will value a Polaroid, even though it doesn't have any better, quality of photo over a digital shot, that they'll buy the Polaroid because, like, oh yeah, it's got the chemical process and you had to set it up a bit more and put that extra time in, and that's great. I do like Polaroids and risographs, but when they're used for the wrong reason and they're used as the advertising point to increase the price, it's not good. It's in bad faith, in my opinion.
I do feel like I'm mimicking someone by saying this, but I can't remember who. Content is king, basically, isn't it? It shouldn't necessarily be the process.
Yeah. Well, it is so frustrating because a good example is Animal Bro with their zine Your Mum's Realm of the Senses. It is a risograph 2-color, but it's the most hilarious, and it's just a A3 piece of paper folded in bits, but it's the most hilarious and wonderful zine, and I would pay $5 for that.
With a title like that, I would think it would be a amazing zine.
Yeah, and the best thing is it folds out to a poster, so I've got it on my wall.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I just think it's really good, but I guess I'll also mention now that part of the reason I don't like risographing from a library standpoint, because I also run the library up here in Brisbane, is that it rubs off if it's not sealed. And a lot of people either don't know that it has to be sealed with, like, a spray or whatever, varnish, or they just don't pay for it to try and keep costs down. So I have to put the risograph zines in a separate area. People have to, like, I'm not going to ask people to wear gloves, but I have to tell them to, like, be careful because the ink will come off. It's really frustrating with you have the entire zine is risographed and the ink starts rubbing off inside the actual zine on its own, so you can't read it properly after a while.
Oh, page rub. I hadn't even thought of that.
And that's why newspapers do the same thing, but newspapers are designed to be thrown out after, the 12 hours has passed. But these ones are clearly being sold as a high item, luxury zine.
Yeah, and when you pay that much for a zine, you don't want somebody to argue with you, oh, it's just ephemeral. Like, I don't want it to be ephemeral. I paid a lot for this. I'd like it to stick around for a while, thanks.
Yeah. Like, I paid $2 for a newspaper. I don't buy newspapers, but if I did, I'd pay $2 for one, not $5. And it has, they pay their editors, and, they have multiple people and crazy good colors, shit like that.
Yeah. So, I wanted to wrap up this podcast with your thoughts on a couple of things, but sort of all around a possible changing of mindset in zine culture. We're living in a time when more and more people have grown up with the world as a marketplace. If you make a thing, you can sell it. There are teens who have earned enough to pay for university before they even graduate, just selling the things they make. Many zine makers would have a laugh at the idea of making real profits with zines, but do you think this view is changing?
Yes. From my work with people in Brisbane, youth people, young people, they will come in and they see that we have free printing on the caveat that, they chill and, use it for positive things, and they can, they can sell their zine for whatever they want, but they'll come in and bring in like a business plan for their zine making and designs, and I'm just like, oh baby, like I'm really proud that you tried to, take those really positive steps, but that's not how it works. They come in, some people are coming into it with the idea, and they're being told this, my guess, by a lot of teachers and a lot of people. They're being told, if you put money into something to create it, you must have a business plan, it must be viable. Something is not worth doing unless it's financially viable, which I think is an abhorrent idea.
Oh gosh, that's terrifying to think that so many youth peoples are being told that.
Yeah, and I don't ever put it on them, and if they want to continue doing the business plan, like, I will support that, but I let them know that they should be able to create and make those nice things without having that looming over their head. The idea that I have to make the thing, and if it doesn't make a profit, it wasn't worth it, I've got to change it, I've got to make it more market accessible. I'm like, no, it's fine. You will get support, and people will like things more if they're not, hyper tailored and marketed.
Oh, that's exactly it. Like, I'm trying to pick examples out of the air all of a sudden, but basically, I love the handmade, the cut and paste, the janky sort of alignment of text blocks and things like that. Like, I love that so much. That shows personality. And while I do love a higher end, beautiful art, that like I can appreciate that for what it is, but that to me isn't a zine sort of thing. That is what it is, and it's gorgeous and beautiful and stuff like that. But a zine is personality to me. It's
like I barely even edit most of my zines. If you've read the most recent Prepared for Melbourne 2, like I read through it once, and then I was like, putting, changing grammar and stuff, and then I read through it again after I started sending it out. I'm like, I didn't edit this well at all, and it doesn't matter because I was trying to just get out that message. It doesn't matter that it's, it got a message out, people were able to read it, it was accessible for me because I'm really bad at grammar and the like. I'm absolutely atrocious at it, and it makes me really, really anxious to go through and constantly edit things. So for me, part of that accessibility is having my message out there, even though it might not be perfect. My high school English teacher would hate me.
Well, I can say, as someone who's actually trained to be an editor, that I love your zine. I love all of your zines. And even with my editing background, I am the person who would love to go around town with a red texter and fix things. Like, I'm that kind of editor. Like, I have the soul of an editor, even though I'm a writer. For me, zines are a part. It goes back to accessibility for me. It shouldn't be about perfect grammar and perfect spelling, as long as I can understand what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah. And it's really, I think it's quite ableist to assume that everyone should be like, constantly having to market themselves and edit and, make things perfectly refined. I'm like, it does not need it.
Exactly.
If people want to, then fucking 10 out of 10, go nuts, but don't go around, shaming people who don't.
That's actually touches on a big thing that when I was doing research and trying to figure out notes and what I wanted to ask you and things like that, that touches on a big thing in that I realized that ideals are fantastic, but ideals become a problem when they turn into expectations. It's good to have, ideally, I'd like to give away all my zines for free, but no one should expect free zines.
Exactly. You go in and, like, if someone doesn't want to trade, you don't expect that they can trade. Maybe they've spent all their money on making the zine and they're only barely scraping back profit, so you never expect that they do trade, but you really hope that people, like, if they can, they do. Exactly.
I keep thinking about printer ink because I'm about due and to get, oh god, it's so expensive. But anyway, so with the world as a marketplace, with the new zine makers coming in, especially the youth peoples, I'm going to keep saying that because I think it's hilarious. with the youth peoples especially, but not exclusively, do you think there is a disconnect between these newer zine makers and the history and culture of zine making? Like, do you think there is a gap that there are a lot of people coming in who don't understand or know about the culture and the trading and the marginalized voices, etc., etc.?
I think yes, but I think it's less about knowing the history and more about doing things in good faith. Like, if I have a lot of people who come in and they know nothing about zines, but they will get it the moment you, like, you know, even just mention, oh, it's a small print thing that marginalized voices use to tell their story or do some cool art or whatever the hell. And most people, I find, even, you know, young people, because bloody teenagers these days are so clued on, fucking 10 out of 10 for youth people these days. They get it. So I don't find that there's too much of a disconnect unless they're coming in, you know, with the business plans, or they're doing it to further nothing but themselves. It's okay to make zines that showcase your work. I love seeing zines that are dedicated to people's art and the like, but then I see a lot of people where they don't know about the trading. They're like, oh, I'm making a zine. It is my zine. I'm not willing to trade. I'm only doing it because I want people to see my work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's where it comes into bad faith, but I don't think that is exclusive to only new ones.
No, definitely. The whole I am me, look at my things. Like, zines are not a stage, they are a conversation. But I haven't seen that too much, thankfully.
Well, you don't do a lot of events as much, do you? You're a bit more of the isolated, rural zine maker, which I love.
Yes, I actually was going to start calling myself the zine hermit, and then I looked up the definition of hermit, and there's actually a religious aspect, so I really have to I have to figure out my definition. But yeah, the social anxiety, I kind of just like, you know, shouting from my little cave in South Australia.
Well, a lot of zine makers I know do have that extra social anxiety, so I do like that zines give a lot of people who might not be able to talk a voice.
Exactly.
See, I've already got a loud voice. Like, I'll fucking, you know, yell my opinion at anyone who's willing to give me half a minute to listen.
Well, we're at an hour and 5 minutes and counting.
Oh, wow. Sorry, I've made this way too long.
Oh, don't apologize. It was more like, you know, I love your voice. You can talk about all the things. Oh, goodness. I know I had a last question, but I think we pretty much covered that, unless you wanted to talk about people invading the zine scene.
Yeah, I would like to touch on that a little bit, because I feel like there is an issue of people taking advantage of people in good faith. Like, Sticky makes a free event in good faith that people will use it to sell zines. And over the past few years, there have not been people who are willing to do that. You know, at Zix, we do things in good faith, but we do charge for a table, so we have way more control over how things will be, you know, done, and we let people sell things other than zines, but it has to be an 80-20 split. However, people at the Festival of the Photocopier, they went in there with the no zines, just none. They were literally just selling Etsy market bullshit.
So I this is, sorry, I'm a bit shocked. So there were people there who had literally no zines at their table? Like, they just were selling stuff?
From what I saw as things that they sold, yeah. Or either that, or the zines were, like, very not, you know, prominent.
Here I have this mini zine, but look at my handmade candles.
Not even handmade stuff, like mass art prints.
Oh, yes, I did want to talk about that, because you mentioned someone was actually selling a book, like a book,
like an actual book that they claimed it was a zine. Actually, you know what? I am going to say names. This was Frances Cannon, whose work I think is fucking integral. Like, oh my god, she does amazing stuff and lifts up marginalized voices with her exposure and experience. However, her actions at Festival of the Photocopier kind of undid a lot of that in my mind. I'm just like, I don't want to think any less of her because of some actions at an event that she had easy accessibility to. So it's like so annoying, selling people going around. When I went there last year, people were all wearing, they were all carrying around the same types of art prints. They were there to buy stuff specifically from her and a few other bigger people. And it's important that those big people do go there. It's a great draw for the general public who might not understand zines or wouldn't have gone there in the first place unless there were more famous people. But there has to be some kind of... Artists need to stand up and say to themselves, oh, I shouldn't sell all my stuff at Festival of the Photocopier. I should just sell my zines. I might have other stuff, but I'm not going to sell it there.
I mean, if you're at a zine fest and even if you only sell zines and you have, a bunch of other stuff, like if you're selling the zines, then people will look you up.
Yeah, absolutely. People are taking advantage of a good faith event. And from the Instagram stories and everything else I was looking at from the event, all the popular people sat in the same spots. It created a bottleneck, and then people would, go through, get the thing that they wanted from the more famous person. Then they might look at a few other tables and then just fuck off. Which is... And I mentioned this in my zine Too Pretentious for Melbourne. Sticky can't put assigned tables and then, police the assigned tables for 200 people.
Sticky has enough to do around Festival of the Photocopier.
Exactly. It's not on them if as they're doing this in good faith. It is on people to not take advantage of that good faith. Exactly.
And you mentioned in Too Pretentious that there was actually, you had a quote from the Sticky email, and it said, this is something to the line of, this is a zine-only event.
Yeah, it's literally in their email that you get for confirmation to attend the event. And people just, fuck it, just do whatever the hell. And I'm not going to go say that I'm the best person, because I didn't read the email for it last year that said exactly the same thing, and I tried to sell other bullshit, and I shouldn't have. But we need to have more people standing up and being like, we can't. You got to self-regulate.
Yeah, there's a responsibility from the people, basically, the community. We shouldn't be afraid to say these things.
I was about to say another amazing zine and comic maker, Natalie Michelle Williamson. She did that. She went to Sticky in good faith. She had a cool setup, but she only sold her comics and zines. She has heaps of other stuff that she can sell. I've bought one of her jumpers before because 10 out of 10 design.
Did she have problems at Festival of Photocopier selling?
I don't know. I didn't ask, but I could tell that she was dismayed. Like, when you think about it, if she followed the rules in good faith, and she probably lost sales because of it, because people weren't there just to buy zines. She potentially lost, the ability to sell more zines, or if she had flaunted the rules, which, she didn't, she could have made more money selling the other stuff, because that's clearly what people were there for. So she's like in a lose-lose situation in both of those situations.
Yeah, it's not really fair, is it? I did want to touch on the bottleneck situation, the artists clumping together thing. Was that something you experienced when you were down there?
Yes, absolutely. People, I know that a lot of these more popular people are friends. Because, they openly state it, and I think that's super great, because that's how through those networks, people can work in more positive ways. But it's a 5-hour event. You don't have to sit next to your bestie for the whole bloody time. And another thing is that, because I now coordinate Zix, and I've been volunteering for them for, over a year now, I know that when we set up, because we have we only got many less people than the Sticky ever does as zine holders, table holders. When we put people in assigned seating, we don't clump together the famous people. Like, Philip Dearest, yeah, we chuck him up the back a little bit, but that's because we know people will go to his table no matter what. Like, we do it so that people walk through. You know, it's important that everyone gets that equal kind of spacing.
And I think, and this is a little bit self-focused of me, but I want to comment on the bottlenecking, because when I was down there in 2016, there was a bit of bottlenecking, and I, as we both mentioned, I'm a highly anxious person, and I was walking through and suddenly seeing that clump of people ahead of me, and there were people behind me. I actually hugged myself, froze, and cried a little bit. Like, I panicked because there were just this huge clump, whereas in other aisles there had been flow. And to give credit to zine makers, zine community, that sort of thing, like, nobody minded. Like,
oh yeah, we were all like, oh yeah, just needs a little bit of help.
They're having things that, like, just walk around, that sort of thing. But I don't know. I don't know if it's big in my mind. I think it's something to mention why maybe spreading out of the bigger names would be a good thing, because you have, like, little people like me, not physically little, but little people like me, ending up in an absolute near full-on panic attack because suddenly, boom, there's all the people.
Another issue of disability access, like, it's clearly not mentally, it's not good for anyone's mental health in that kind of squished area. Also, people flaunt that no food, no drink rule all the time in that space. And I know Sticky has asked people really specifically not to do it, but I have a severe nut allergy. I cannot be in the same room as there being nuts. And I saw people eating that shit everywhere. Because nuts are healthy. Everyone else should definitely eat them. Don't stop. But I felt unsafe.
Exactly. I mean, respect the rules for a reason. It's you should not be threatened at a zine event. Your life should not be threatened at a zine event.
I think a lot of the issue does come from the vast number of people. Sticky wants to make it accessible for everyone to have a table as much as they want everyone to come in and buy the stuff. And I think that's really, really positive of them, because it's like, you know, I couldn't manage a 200-person event. Fuck. They're doing it because they want people to be there to sell stuff, but I think they're at critical mass now. Anymore, or, you know, keeping it at that level is just gonna, you know, make it shit.
Yeah, I was talking to someone, and even the table situation was a bit cramped and didn't make sense, and it was a little bit uncomfortable. So yeah, I don't think they could make it any bigger, and with people flaunting and being like, I don't need to obey the rules, or just not reading the rules, then you have situations that could eventually, you know, crash someone into a panic attack or put someone like you in very real danger. And it wouldn't be on Sticky. It's about the people who are at this event and all the people who are going in good faith and expecting certain rights and safety nets to be in place.
Exactly. That's part of what I do at what we try and do at Zix. The reason why we have it in the state library is so that we are disability friendly. We, you know, have, you know, okay lighting, nothing's overstimulating. If you only need a table for one day, you can have that if that's all you can handle. But yeah, I just feel like the accessibility, you have to sacrifice one for the other. We have less tables, so less people can have a table. But we also, for the people who do attend, at 110% they feel comfortable and safe.
That's awesome and amazing and wonderful. That is so cool.
Fucking shout out to Jeremy, who's been organising Zix and who handed it over to me last week. He has helped propagate such a wonderful, like, event, and for everything to be accessible and wonderful.
Oh, that's so great.
He was great.
Like, I feel like these, as long as we police each other, and I hate to use the word police because it sounds so, you know, But
moderate, is that a better word?
Yeah, as long as we're keeping checks and moderate and constructively commenting to each other on things that maybe aren't cool for everybody. Like, I feel like events can be really good. Now, I haven't been to Zix personally, but the 80-20 rule, the fewer tables, the spread out, you can do it one day, all of those options and things like that and considerations, I feel like are showing all the good things that a zine fest can be.
Yeah, and we are a small one. Like, we do say that part of the reason why we have that is because it's Brisbane. We don't have as big of a art and zine scene here. We acknowledge that, but for what we do, we try and manage it excellently.
And yeah, I just like, even now I have this little bit of a cringe because I don't want to be like criticizing people or anything like that, but at the same time I feel like we need to be able to, as long as we're not being mean about it, as long as we're not being like rah, grr, but
if you make a criticism in good faith with the idea that the criticism, if taken on, would help improve the situation, then I think it's totally fair.
Yeah, exactly. If it's done in a positive, like I don't mean to insult anybody or that sort of thing. We should be able to say these things, and I hope people find courage to say these things, because unless they do, unless we're talking to each other, then it's forcing, in the Sticky situation, it's forcing Sticky to either watch something bad spread in their zine fest, or it's forcing them to do more work at a time when they have a heck of a lot of things on anyway.
Exactly. And because they're doing it in good faith, we should be standing up to the plate. A lot of people treated it like, oh, I'm just going to rock up, I don't have to contribute in any other way, I'm just going to rock up and sell my zines at a fair. Whereas a lot of people at Zix, like a lot of the table holders, they kind of come in like, yeah, I'm paying for a table, like, what else can I do, kind of thing. It's kind of a different attitude.
Yeah, but good.
I actually find that a big difference in the art scenes in different cities. Brisbane seems to be more of like helpful. Like, everyone's just supporting each other because we don't get much support from, the government.
Yeah.
Whereas in Melbourne it feels a bit more, cutthroat.
Yes, it feels big, and it feels like there's less definition between, I don't know if definition's the right word, but less of a distinction between zines and art and that sort of thing. I feel like it all kind of gets globbed up into this big art ball sort of thing, and it's hard to distinguish, and it makes it even harder for newer people coming into it.
Absolutely.
Oh, goodness, what a discussion.
A bit of a long one, eh?
Yeah, a bit, but oh, goodness me. So many topics and everything. I'm so excited.
I feel like we can definitely do a couple more of these with just some of the tangents.
Oh, yeah, just a tangent. We'll call it the tangent cast.
Yeah, like just a 20-minute zine rant quickie.
So, yeah, we probably should kind of wrap things up. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners?
Well, I'd have to say, if you're in Brisbane, come around to Visible Ink and Copy and Destroy, have a look at the library. There is a limit for ages to use this space, but there's no age limit on actually seeing the library. So we always welcome donations as well. If you email us a digital version of your zine, we'll print off one copy or as many copies as you'll let us and distribute them.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, we've been doing that with some of your missives from Murray Ridge.
Oh, yes. I love that. Throwing things into the ether and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much again for joining me on the Zine Collector and talking about all of this interesting stuff.
Oh, it was very fun. Definitely keen to do this again.
Yeah, I think, despite, all the pre-anxieties, this has been really, really good. So thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome.
that is it for today, Zine friends. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Zine Collector. Another huge thanks to Sober Bob as well. I have a lot of anxieties, and a lot of them are around phones and communication and things like that in general, and she was amazing with working with me to deal with that ball of chaos. So thank you again to Sober Bob for the chat and the support in that area. Be sure to check the descriptions, not just only for all the names that we both mentioned, but also for Sober Bob's links. It's definitely worth checking out, I promise. Next episode, we will be back to the usual swing of things, and I actually have a plan, so I can tell you that we will be talking about how to get started in zines, a few tips from yours truly, and the usual segments, including a little Q&A about inspiration. So be sure to come back next fortnight for that. Remember that everything I say is just my opinion. There are no gatekeepers in the Zineverse, nor should there be. Be sure to stop by seagreenzines.com, where I review zines every Thursday and Friday. This month I am celebrating Mini Zine March, so all of my reviews this month will be mini zine reviews. And I also have a couple of Wednesday reviews thrown in just for fun. The music for this podcast, Spanish Summer by Audionautics, is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution license. This is Zine Collector. I'm your host, Jaime Nyx. Until next time, go make some zines. Mwah. So is there anything that you'd like to share in the super secret, not so secret if people find out after credits thing?
All right.
You can say whatever. It could be anything. It could just be like, hey, I'm in the after credits doing your after credits. Right.
Oh, that's actually brilliant. Probably say something real rude or something. You
can just sing, if you like pina coladas.
Yeah. If you like pina coladas and getting cold in the rain, I'm super hungover. I managed to get through this podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. I recorded that. You can put that at the end.
There we go. And stopping recording.